Okay, so here we are going to talk about how to use Excel or Google Docs. I'm using Google Docs. Excel would be the exact same way, uses the exact same procedure. How to use a spreadsheet to do simple calculations for you, such that all you've got to do is use higher order brain function for a couple of minutes and then let the computer do all the work for you. So here I have some very generic data that I just sort of came up with. Some objects, baseball, bowling ball, car, house, their masses in grams, and measured velocity in miles per hour. And what I'm trying to do is determine the kinetic energy of all these objects. So I want a column right here that is kinetic energy, and I want it in units of joules, which is kilogram meter squared per second squared. Now, I just want to make sure that I do everything right, so I'm just going to, down here, for my own purposes, write kinetic energy equal to 1 half mv squared, where that v2 means that it's squared. And that, I'm just going to do that to help me sort of remember what my formula is, and I'm going to build off of this. So I need the units in joules, which is a joule is equal to a kilogram meter squared per second squared. So you'll notice my formula I have to have the velocity in meters per second before I square it. I need the mass in kilograms. So my mass is in grams, and I need my mass to be in kilograms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these other columns to sort of like do all the work for me. And I could do this in one column in one piece, or I can do it in one calculation, or I can do it in several calculations. And it doesn't really matter which way. I'm actually going to do it in a couple of pieces. So I'm going to have a couple of other columns. So I'm going to put velocity, because I know I need to have a velocity in meters per second. And I need to have a mass in kilograms. So I'm going to actually do the mass in kilograms easy first. So I need to convert mass in grams into mass in kilograms. And so I know I need to divide by 1,000. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this cell, go up here to the f of x, sort of bar. And again, in Microsoft Excel, it's very similar. I'm going to put equals, and I want to take this 205, but I want to put 205. I want to put whatever's in this cell. So this cell is B2. So if I click on this cell, after I put an equal sign, I click on this cell, notice now it says B2. And I want to take everything that's in B2, and then, so I go back up here, and I type divided by 1,000, and hit enter. And so now, the mass here in kilograms, notice it is 205 divided by 0.205, but if I click on the cell, it's not 0.205, it's a formula, B2 divided by 1,000. Now, I need the masses of all of these in kilograms, and I don't want to have to retype all of that. So if I go up to this cell, I hit Control C, and then I go and I highlight these. I highlight these by holding down the Shift button and then arrow down, and then I hit Control V. It's just a cut and paste. And I'm not sure if in Google Docs, if I go up here and go Edit, Copy, and then Shift, arrow, 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 and then Edit, Paste. Yep, that works too. Awesome. So now I have my masses in kilograms. Awesome. Now I need to get my velocity in meters per second. So let's say I know 1 mile is equal to 1609 meters, and I know there's 3,600 seconds for 1 hour. So I know those two conversion factors, so I should be able, with a little bit of thinking, I can figure out that for me to get velocity in meters per second, I go into my velocity thing, I go back up to my function area, and I hit equals. I know I need to take the velocity in miles per hour, which is this number, and I need to multiply it by 1,609, and I know I need to divide it by 3,600. Now, this is an Excel or Google Docs or any other spreadsheet. It has no ideas to the concept of units. It has no idea as to the concept of significant figures. So you have to be smarter than the computer in this case. I put in 1609. That's the conversion from meters to seconds, and I did a unit cancellation or unit conversion, as an aside someplace else. At this point, just trust me that to convert miles per hour into meters per second, I have to multiply by 1609 and divide it by 3600. You've got to be very, very crystal clear and correct in doing these unit conversions, because the units will never sort of cancel out because there are no units. You can't put any units in a spreadsheet. So you have to do the math separately and sort of just make sure you got it set up right. And I hit enter, and there's the velocity in meters per second. Now notice how I have two significant figures in my miles per hour, and the velocity when in meters per second, it gave it to me in 15,000. Or not 15,000, but like 10 significant figures or 10 digits. I can change how many significant figures this displays very easily. If I highlight those cells and I go to Format, Number, Custom Decimals, and Excel is similar. In this case, I can, it doesn't do significant figures, it only does decimal places. So I'm just going to have it listed as 1, which I know is more sig figs than I need, but I'll truncate those later. So now back to the formula. So I typed out the formula, and the formula is the same for all of those velocities per second. So again, I'm going to go up to that cell, and I'm going to hit Edit, Copy. I'm going to highlight those, and then I'm going to hit Edit, Paste. And so those are the velocities in meters per second. Okay, so now I have the velocity in meters per second, I have the mass in kilograms. Now, I can now get to kinetic energy, I believe, because I have the velocity in meters per second, I have the mass in kilograms. And now I go to kinetic energy, and so I know to get kinetic energy, I'm in that cell, my formula is 1/2 mv squared. So I'm going to put 0.5, that's the 1/2. I'm going to multiply it by velocity, which is, mass in kilograms, which is this number. So I click on that cell, chunk, and then I have to multiply it by the square of the velocity. And there's a bunch of different ways we can do this. One way is just say multiply by that cell, and then multiply by that cell again, F2. Or we could put in parentheses and then do an umlaut and do square. We could, for example, make this column the square of the velocity, and then just do that times that. There's a bunch of different ways of to do it. But then here is my kinetic energy. So that's 1/2, the 0.5, times the mass in kilograms, G2, times the velocity, And notice my kinetic energies, it also gives me many significant figures, or many digits, which is more than I could. And so either I go in and format the number and give it the correct number of decimal places, or whatever. So again, since I've typed it out once, I can go up to Edit, Copy, highlight those cells, Edit, Paste, and there they are. Reported to, many, many digits. Now, of course, I can go in and I can delete this column. Move, there's a delete. Can't see it there, just trust me, I can delete it. And I put in these words, velocity in meters per second, mass in kilograms. These are sort of intermediate values for me. This sort of data was just sort of for my own personal benefit. I can delete that later once I confirm I've done all the math right. I can't delete these columns because if I go in and I delete all this data, then obviously that throws this number out. So I needed that for intermediate calculations. Could I have done this in just one fell swoop and just gone straight from mass in grams to velocity in meters in miles per hour straight to kinetic energy? Yes, but it just would have involved a lot more math and a lot more thinking beforehand. So you know how we did one unit conversion to go from mass in grams to mass in kilograms, and then we did another conversion from velocity of miles per hour to meters per second, and then we calculated kinetic energy from those converted numbers. We don't have to do that. We can do all this in one big smash. it would take a little bit more time to sort of think about, but once we come up with the one formula, which will be a little bit more complex than this, obviously, we can do it. So there's lots of different ways of skinning the cat. It's all just a matter of how many pieces do you want to break the calculation down into. And if you want to break it down into more pieces to make it more logical, that's okay. That's fine. One of the advantages of doing it this way, instead of doing intermediate calculations, is that you can more easily see when you make mistakes, and that you might say, oh yes, that doesn't make sense in terms of a mass to grams, or a velocity of 98 miles per hour. If you determine that it's 1 meter per second, you could say, that doesn't look right. So doing the intermediate calculations allows you to see mistakes easier. So hopefully that will help you out. Good luck.